So far it looks like we've got Bob and Mike, which is great. Mike, you're muted. I see that on your screen. But do either one of you, and Bob, you asked a question, but before I begin, do either one of you have a question that you would ask me?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I guess the silence is that there isn't. My purpose here is from a 30,000 foot view to go through that outline, talking about what each one of those things means in my kickoff. Now, as Wendy will also tell you, and she'll post with this, that on the website is a full video. So if you just want to sit and spend 40, 50 minutes watching a kickoff that was done at a trusted advisor meeting a while back, but it's pretty much what this outline is. But the other thing I will do is I will go through some of the specific things I do as we go through each one. And at any time, you know, a question comes up, just break in and ask the question, because if you're having it, somebody else will have it, or somebody that one day watches this will find it useful to do. So I'll begin. Let me just stop for a moment. I want to ask each one of you, Bob or Mike, and I'm going to make it interactive. What do you believe the purpose of the kickoff is? Mike, I'll ask you first because I haven't heard you. I want to hear your melodious voice. Don't hear you, Mike. Does anybody else hear Mike?
No, I think he's on mute.
Mike, you must be on mute. Still on mute. I'll go to Bob. Mike, you're still on mute. Bob?
Okay, what I think it means is kind of setting the ground rules. It's getting an understanding of what the person or people are all about, explaining what you're all about, what we're trying to accomplish here, maybe a little bit of our background. It sets the stage for that, and then gets them thinking about what we're going to do over the next 10 weeks and how we're going to do it.
And that's a great answer. It's perfect answer, except it's not the 30,000 foot answer. What I mean is conceptually, what is your purpose? And Mike, are you ready to speak yet, or you're still muted? Still muted. I can see you're perplexed. On your screen, Mike, the microphone has a red check through it. So as far as I'm concerned, you are muted, and now you're not. So speak and see if I hear you. No.
Arnie, he had this. This is the same problem we were having on.
Oh, good. Dan Elliott came on. Dan, can you hear me, Dan?
Yeah, I can hear you. But we had this a call just right before this one that Mike was on, and one of the guys had the exact same problem where
just couldn't get it off.
Just couldn't hear it all. Yeah.
Okay. Dan, my question was the 30,000 foot view of the kickoff. What do you think it is? And Bob gave me a great answer of lots of wonderful things, but I'm looking for this concept that what needs to happen at the kickoff. And we want to take a stab at it?
I would say the participants buy-in.
Exactly. It's participants buy-in. Now, I'm going to go a little further, because for the whole process, beginning with the kickoff, but throughout the whole process, it's tremendously powerful. And the more the participant engages, the more powerful the process becomes. I want to get an amen to that, or what do you mean, or something like that. Okay? Got it?
I'll give you an amen.
Good.
Okay.
Dan?
Amen.
Good. That's all I need is every so often I'll say, what do you think? And then, yeah, it works, or amen. And so it's my role as the facilitator, whether I'm working one-on-one with a coaching client or I'm working with a group, is I must get them, not I must get them, The more I can get them to participate, the more value they will receive from the process. Okay? So if you've ever, I never did it, but I guess I could, sell somebody the stuff. Let them go through it on their own. Check with them at the end, see how it works. It doesn't. I take that back. Somebody once did buy the sales development process from me. They really got nothing from it. And so that beginning with the kickoff, that's your first beginning to get buy-in. Now, not for the purpose of this call, but that is a consistent message that never changes. So, and Wendy will remember that frequently I do something on the third meeting where I'm asking people, did you do the work? And the third meeting on every process is the first time that there's been significant work in the workbook, other than put dreams down and stuff like that. And frequently there will be people that don't do it. And depending on the venue and depending on who hired me and what I'm doing, I can get pretty tough. So much so that the people might not want to keep working with me. Now, I can repair that, but I then will go through this whole thing about the more, I got Mike. Mike said something because I got his picture. Mike, say something.
I'm not sure it's working yet.
It is.
Well, I got you. Whatever you just said, I got. Okay, so.
Cool.
And I see you big and beautiful, and I'm thrilled with that. Okay, good. So you're doing well. So the point I'm getting at, there will be times when somebody doesn't do the work, that there's a fine line balance between chasing somebody away and pissing them off and getting them to understand that they must do the work. The more they do the work, the more valuable they'll get. Doesn't mean you'll find people that just don't want to do it. And that goes into the first thing as we talk about introduction. But I wanted to set the tone for that because that never changes. And so it's my goal or my role in the kickoff to keep people involved and interested, which means I never want to have more than 6 or 7 people in a group that I'm working with. Because if somebody has 10 that they want to hire me to do, I'll do 2 groups of 5. And so I need to be paying attention. I mean, right now, this is great. I'm looking at 3 people. I'm paying no attention to Wendy because she's in the background. But I'm paying attention to 3 people. Oh, good. I just saw Mike smile. So I said something that had there he's doing it again. See that? Now the guy with the beard, Dan up in the corner, I may not see a whole lot. And poor Bob, he's got the sun in his eyes. So the point being is I must be paying attention to the people. So I go through and I'm looking at the introduction.
Hey, Arnie?
Yeah.
When you're turning your head, you get very light. We can't hear you.
Yeah, there's sun behind me. I'll try not to turn my head. Okay.
No, your voice goes away.
Yeah, because again, boy, you just got away from the sun, Bob. I see you well. Yes, whatever you just did, I'm seeing you. Okay. So I'm going through the first part of it's the introduction, your background, their background. Now, I'm going through a process with somebody that I have known for 20 years. And it's the first time that we've ever done, he's been my client, we've done other things, but now what's happening in his life made the leadership process particularly apt for him. So when I did the your background, their background, we've known each other a long time. So I had to vary that. And so you think about that, and that's where sometimes you will deviate from the script. But I do go through, as I keep going, it talks about 85% of the reason an individual or company succeeds is attitude. I mentioned we'll speak about attitude. Then the next bullet point is most people do not plan to fail, but 97% fail to plan well enough to achieve potential. We will speak about goals. We will need to acquire skills. We will speak about skills. Now, I'm reading the outline. I obviously say it differently, but just more parenthetically than if the vacuuming in another room becomes distracting, let me know. I've moved them out of this room. They're, in a hallway. And so what I do then is come back and say, you'll notice I did talk about 3 things: attitude, skills, and goals. That will be a theme, and that's me speaking to a group, not only for this kickoff meeting to introduce you to the process, but throughout this process, we will continue talking about attitude, skills, and goals. So that becomes a mantra, attitude, skills, and goals, because those three things always pervade everything I do as a consultant. And I think everything that Trusted Advisors does, and kind of learned it from Trusted Advisors. So then the next thing on the outline is, what do I want you to do? What are the goals for what we're doing today? And I walk through three things: take notes, hear and think, keep an open mind, and embrace change. Now, I then come back and talk about how to take notes. And I use the concept of taking notes, whether it's in the paper form or using the digital form. Please, as you're reading and learning, please take notes, because that provides feedback for what you need to know more about. Because I will ask you, as in this kickoff, I want you to take notes. And as you're reading and learning, as we do the facilitated process from week to week, I want you to have taken notes. And as we're going week to week, I will see who's not taking notes and ask how come. You know, did you get it all? There's nothing you really liked or nothing you didn't like. And if I'm with people, I'll show them my book, which is filled with notes. When I'm doing it, as we're doing it now, I am doing this with Zoom with a particular person I'm working with. He's in Denver. I can't quite do that, but I say, did you take notes? So I talk about taking notes. I then talk about embrace change. And what I do with I've jumped to the third one, obviously. What I do with the embrace change is, I would say to a participant, Mike, I did meet you about 3 years ago when you joined the network. And from what I remember, you had a couple jobs and you had done some things in your life. Do you remember that? Is that accurate? Great.
Yep.
So has change been part of your life?
Sure.
Well, you bet. Well, that's true for everybody all the time. But I want people to think about their lives. Now, oftentimes, if I'm sitting in a room and 3 or 4 or 5 people have gone around their background, take a few notes. And I want to point out, how has it worked out when you didn't embrace change? I got fired, okay, or things didn't work well, because that is the constant in our lives. So you have no choice but to embrace change. And so that's one of the overview things I'm going to want you to do. Then the middle one, which now I think becomes the most important thing of all, keep an open mind. Now, says everybody willing to keep an open mind, and in the history of the world, I don't think I've ever met anybody that says, no, I'm not going to keep an open mind. But I said, I want you to think about something, because most of the time when you're learning stuff, without realizing it, we think about our learning is, I've got to stop doing something and do something else. And that's what most people mean when they say keep an open mind. Because I want to take your open mind and no, I want you to do it a different way. And so that the message that I'm giving here, I have examples that I'll use for it, is I don't want to take away anything you're currently doing. I want to add to it. So whenever you believe in your heart that either this material or what I'm doing now wants to stop anything you're doing, or have you stop anything you're doing, not at all. I want to add to whatever you're doing. That's the purpose of the process and the purpose of this meeting that we're involved in now. I tend to not call it a kickoff oftentimes. So those are the 3 things of the seminar goals. And then I come, because I've just talked about open mind, I then go into, let's test the open mind concept. And so in that testing, I go through the 16 squares, the count the dots, the count the F's, those things that were going, when I say those three things, everybody know what I mean? When I say
I know the 16 squares, which are really
16 squares, where you look up and you say, how many squares do you see? Which is one of the exercises we've always used. And almost, what's that?
Connect the dots.
Yeah, you connect the dots. And I do have to tell you, if you yourself haven't done the connected dots in a year, make sure before you go into the kickoff, you didn't forget it. It's only happened to me about 8 times. I kind of know the concept that, oh crap, what am I doing? And so I've learned in my heart that I got to do it. And one of the other things that RAC does have, I tend to not use it. I like to do stuff live. Is there's some PowerPoints on the kickoff that have all these things, and it's just nice to have those things because it's an easy way to remember all these things visually. And so those are the things I'll use, and I'll go through them. You'd start to say, you guys know the 16 squares, you know the 9 dots. And by the way, the thing I do with the squares is everybody does get, 17. Oh, yeah, I get it. And they start to go and put the 2 together and 3 together. But what's even more fascinating is, and I don't know, when I do this, and it didn't come up earlier, I just kind of figured it out through the years, is that every place where one of the lines meet is a square. And so that every place where a line meets is a square. Then you got black squares and white squares. I don't know how many it gets up to, but it's 80 or 90. And so it's useful having people come to see that. That is an example of we tend to create limits for ourselves. The other thing I do say is when I do the connect the dots, I bring up, almost everybody has seen it, but nobody remembers how to do it. I mean, nobody's a little bit too strong, but people have seen it. And I remember when I was seeing this I saw that one time before that I'd seen that. And I didn't know how to do it. And that's been my experience. When somebody hasn't reviewed it for a couple of years, and so you're meeting people in their 40s and 50s, they've seen that, but they don't remember how to do it. And so what I make a major point of talking about is, and I bring that up. I know this is not new to you guys or gals, but I know most of you couldn't do it. And that's been my experience no matter what. And the reason I use this is as old as it is because how many times have you heard people say, you got to think outside the box? This is the box. This is the best example of the box that you could come up with. And so that's why I bring that up and use it. The count the F's is kind of fun. There was another one that Doug Brown used to use, and I remember watching him do it at different times, is take people's watch and have them take it off and put it down and then say, draw the watch. And it's funny because people don't know whether their watch had numerals or dots or letters or whatever. They don't know if their watch was black or white. And so it's kind of funny. But today with electronic watches, I'm wearing an electronic watch. I'm not sure how great that is, but that was also another fun exercise.
Arnie, what was the count the F's? I don't know if I know that one.
Oh, count the F's is a paragraph. And Wendy can send you that when she's finished. And you go through the paragraphs, and it's a paragraph. I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 sentences. You read through it, and it's count the F's in it. And everybody forgets the F and of, whatever it is, and there's a few words like that. Nobody ever will count 100% unless you give them, 20, 25 minutes to do it. But if you're going through and, do this in the next minute and a half, and then put your pencil down, they will forget lots of F's because they're not seeing everything. And that was a good thing about the watch. You'd ask people, how many times a day do you look at your watch? I don't know, hundreds. And you can't reproduce it because you're not looking at the watch. You're looking at the time. Wonderful exercise. So there's a number of those and lots of things that happen. And so now I draw the funnels. And I go up and I get I love to work on a flip chart and draw a funnel. And by the way, I do this on the phone. Zoom is great because I can show somebody on what I'm doing if I'm doing a Zoom or something that's visual. But I even if I'm doing a talking, I say draw a funnel. And that we talk about, we all take in lots and lots of information all the time. And so, and next to the funnel, you're writing down, What your mind is a filter. We prejudge, and I make sure the word prejudice comes out of that word prejudge. We prejudge people, okay? And just as an aside, and this is what I would do now if this were a kickoff. I just finished reading Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers. Okay, he published it 2 weeks ago. I got it because I love everything Malcolm Gladwell does. And I talked about it because it was so, I read it, excuse me. If I were doing a kickoff tomorrow or the next month, I would talk about Malcolm Gladwell's book because we prejudge others and they're not the same as we are. And it leads to lots of problems. And he does a great job of talking about it in that book. So that's, I guess, the other message I want to give you is, as long as you're doing this, it has to be updated, not necessarily to the concept, but what's going on in the world today. Okay. And number one, it gives you credibility that you're using technology, you're thinking, you're doing what you're doing. And by the way, the accept change is the same deal. And I could also say, how many of you had a cell phone, 12 years, not a cell phone, a smartphone, 12 years? Well, you didn't. Okay, you had a flip phone. How many of you are using a flip phone today? And by the way, when I got into this, in the Ice Age, I did a lot of work with calendar books and stuff like that. And then real quick, as the first phone connected to my computer so I could have the thing with me all the time, I had to move to that. And I didn't want to because the book is better. But as things got better, I would never argue today that a book is better. And so think about what you do as you are a consultant doing these things. You need to be aware of what's out there in the world. So just as an aside, it goes, I didn't think about that until I just talked about it now. I hadn't thought about the Malcolm Gladwell book, except what I'm talking now about. Not only it's we don't think alike, and that's what he talks about. Okay, so I got that. I talk about the funnels, and so where we take in 1,000% in our mind, we prejudge, we use our backgrounds, and then only 10% comes out the bottom. And then I talk about, I want this process to reverse the funnels, where we take in 1,000%. Well, we take in 10%, and what comes out the bottom through creativity and open-minded, we get lots of stuff out of the bottom. And that's the process of what we want to go through now. Then the next thing that I want to do now is I take a clean sheet and on my flip chart or a whiteboard if I've got that involved. And I ask a group to give me, tell me what success means to you. Let's follow the outline. And if I'm working one-on-one, I may press somebody to give me 5, 6 things. But I'm working with a group of 5, 6, 7 people. I want 20 or 25 things on that success things because I want everybody to give me 2, 3, or 4. And it will begin like clockwork. I use the word high level or esoteric. And then after a while, I mean, I got 5, 8 things, provide for my family, have a happy life, general, wonderful things you can't argue with. Then I want to drive it down. And I may ask the question, anybody here want houses, boats, and cars? Okay. And then I want to start to get out material stuff. Okay. And so I want to have a long list, and the list will include both what I use the, esoteric, politically correct, conceptual things. And then I want to get it down to specifics. Mike, what do you want? What success mean to you?
Oh, you want a real? I want to travel to a couple of places.
You want what?
I want to travel to a couple of places.
Travel, great. So what are some of the places you want to go to, Mike?
Well, I'd like to go to the Galapagos.
Great. So, and again, this is an example. This is what I'm going to do. I want somebody to give travel. Where? Galapagos. Great. Any place else?
Antarctica.
Great. Antarctica. I've never been to that one. Okay. Great. So, but the point I'm getting at, and I then step back, look at this list. Isn't this neat? And I really will point out exactly what I said. You know, when I start doing this, I get lots of nice stuff, you know, politically correct or whatever. And I use that word, you know. Then when you get down to it, crap, somebody wants to travel. He wants to go to the Galapagos, and somebody else wants a special car. Somebody else wants a special house. Great. I want those lists. I want to get them down. Okay? So now we know what success means. Because the truth is, most people will measure success in material things. Now, I don't claim that's right or wrong. It just is. That we want to be high-minded and want to claim some high-level stuff. But I look, hey, what kind of car is that guy driving? Shit, 10-year-old Chevy. He may not be very successful. I don't mean to crack on 10-year-old Chevys, but the point being is, how does he dress? Is somebody wearing clothes? I always feel bad when I meet older people that are retired. If you can tell how long they've been retired by the clothes they're wearing. They haven't bought a thing since they retired. And we do that, whether we want to do it, whether it's right to do it or not, we do it. And so I like to have things on the table. We do measure success in material things often. And I don't want to claim it's right or it's wrong. It just is. So we've got that list of success. Okay. Now, the next thing is I talk about ideal leader. So I flip that page over. Okay. And I've a new page. Now, this is new to you guys. You hear it, but I'm just giving my twist on some of the things I say or do. Give me some traits of an ideal leader. And I'll do the same thing. Even if I'm working with one person, I still want 15 or 20 things up. If I'm working with a group, I want 20 or 30 things up. And I just keep writing them down. And I keep writing them down. And I will get lots of different things. I mean, this, will relate well to people, has a sense of humor, all those different things. And I keep writing that down. I keep writing that down. Then when I'm done, I say, okay, what I want to do now is I would like to go through that list. And I want to put either an L, though those things that we learn, or a B with those things that we're born with. Now, I don't care what the list is, and I don't argue with anybody, just tell me what you think. And so many things, you have charisma. Okay, so are we born with that or do we learn it? Bob, what do you think? Born with it or learn it?
I think you learn that.
Great. Do you think there's an element of being born with something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And so that many things will be learned. And charisma, I'm not sure about that. That's kind of I'm not sure, but I have no problem with the B or an L. Okay. And I'll go through the whole list, and everybody after 2, 3, 4 will see where I'm going. This is all learned. This is all learned. Well, there could be an L. And so when somebody says, oh, no, you're born with that. Great. What, do you think you could learn something? Absolutely. Great. So every one of them will have an L or a B and an L. Now, when I'm all finished, I'll say, it's kind of interesting. And it's really fun when you've got a bald person in the room. Nobody said full head of hair. Okay. Nobody said blonde. Nobody said blue-eyed. Nobody said tall. And I want to point out those things you are clearly born with. Well, not necessarily blonde, but nevertheless, you get the idea. That was a joke. Nobody even cracked a smile. I'm sorry.
It was good. Making notes.
Come on, Bob, crack a smile. Damn. Okay.
I'm
there you go.
Close attention.
Okay. But I want to, and by the way, if it looks like I'm having fun, I am. I want them to have fun while we're doing this. It's not that serious. We're having fun doing it. So there are places in it that I know where I can get laugh lines. And when you watch the video and you watch it, and I must tell you that when I joined the network, there are lots and lots of places where I learned stuff, in the facilitation guides and everything else. But Wendy, I want to tell me where there was a place to look for laugh lines. Okay. As you do it over time, you see where the laugh lines are, and you'll make them up. You want there to be laugh lines. You want people to be smiling at it, and you want people, and just like I did, that was a joke. Anybody miss it? And because, well, I'm bringing up the obvious one. You may not be born with blonde hair, but you have it. Okay, great. Or you may not be born. I do this to my wife all the time. If she didn't dye her hair, she'd be 100% gray, and she ain't stopping dyeing her hair. So that becomes so I want that to be a left. The tall, nothing you can do about it. So I just leave that for the moment, because the next thing I do, and this is where I've been doing this for a long time, it's in the concept feature to have, is I bring the square, attitude, skills, and goals. You recognize that. And so on the attitude part, does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say we're going to go through attitude, skills, and goals, and we do it as a triangle?
Not exactly. The triangle?
Yeah, well, this particular triangle, where at the top is attitude, down the right side is skills, and at the bottom of the left side is goals. Okay? I use that as a process to talk about the three concepts of attitude, skills, and goals. Now, one of the things I do is I ask the people that I'm working with, because I write that, I put attitudes up at the top. And I say, would somebody define, or how would you define attitudes? Okay? Now, again, for purposes of this, I'm watching the time, is I'll get lots of answers, but nobody will say habits of thought. And so all the answers are good answers, but what most of the answers do is they talk about the effect I'd see. I can see if you have a good attitude or a bad attitude. So when I ask people to define attitudes or define what attitude is, they'll usually give it to me in the concept of what they can see. And so I say, that's like telling me to define wind. And they'll tell me about trees going over, or feeling the effects of the wind as you walk, and holding a coat closed or something. Well, if you really want to know what the wind is, it's a meteorologist will tell you stuff that you wouldn't understand. I don't understand it either. But with attitudes, if I say, what if we use the term habits of thought? Oh, yeah, that makes sense, because it is non-judgmental, whereas most of the time a definition is a good attitude, bad attitude, whatever we say. And so the value of habits of thought is wonderful, because it's non-judgmental. Oh, good. So let's take that apart. So I write down HOT, habits of thought. And so now the question is, how do we learn habits? Oh, excuse me. How do we acquire habits? I screwed that one up. How do we acquire habits? And the answer obviously is anybody? Somebody.
Repetition.
Well, we learn. Okay, then how do we learn? We go to repetition. I think I've lost Dan. I don't mean Dan. I think I've lost Mike. He's not showing up on my screen. Anybody else see him?
You probably got to move back and forth.
Okay, there you are. Okay, I got him again. Okay, good. Move back and forth, Dan. I won't lose you. So,
and you also have, just in case you can't see, Bertha joined us as well, too.
What'd you say?
Bertha joined us as well.
Oh, okay. Somebody else joined us.
Go right and click the
I see that.
gallery, then you'll get all.
I got that. Hang on. Okay, I see somebody. Hi, Bertha. Okay, I can't start over, Bertha, so you'll pick it up on the tape. And now I've lost Bob. I see that. Okay.
You're okay. He's there.
I didn't lose anybody. They disappeared from looking at it. Okay, so that as we came up with it, oh, we learn attitude. Great. And by the way, at that moment, I make the case back to that sheet on leadership. What's a good leader? I go back and say, well, isn't that interesting? And then I'll make another point. Wait a minute. If I had more of these, meaning all of the stuff about success, would I have a greater or lesser chance of getting more of these? And I go to the thing on, and I'm making a big deal about moving the sheets back and forth, or if I'm on a whiteboard going from one to the other, I'm exaggerating the movements. I want people to make those connections that we learn, and we can learn traits of leadership. And you're going to ask a question, Bob?
Yes, I have a question, if you don't mind, because it's important right now. If we're talking about attitude, goals, and skills with that triangle.
Yes.
Finding an attitude, you're saying next to no one will say habits and thoughts.
No, not habits in thought, a habit of thought. An attitude is a habit of thought. Okay. Then I'm going the next step. How do we acquire habits? And you said we learned them. And then I said, and then I make a big point out of linking back to the page on leadership traits. And then I'm leading back to the page on success. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I'm drawing that. And then I might say, who's in charge of what you learn? Anybody?
You are.
You bet. You are in charge of what you learn. It's your choice to learn it. I made the decision to read a book. I learned something. And so you're in charge of it. So you are in charge of becoming the best leader you can be. You are in charge of what you get success from. Now, and I can do this if I'm doing sales, I can do a management, whatever I'm doing, which is like, I love leadership because it leads to everything. But so now I left off, I come back to my thing with habits of thought. How do we learn? We learn in 3 ways. The first is repetition. And I proved that using the times tables, okay, because that's the best example. And I've worked with people in all different cultures, and everybody's learned the timetables same way, 3rd grade with flashcards. I think it's done that way, but it wasn't, that's how we learn stuff. We memorize and we go over it. That's spaced repetition. We're going to use that. But the other way we learn is impact. Okay?
What?
Now let's take a look at impact. And depending, today, I always say to somebody, where were you on September 11, 2001? And everybody can tell you exactly where they were. I was doing this before 2001, and I would use the Kennedy assassination. So you think about specific things that have happened, and you can, if you're in a particular area, and in something else I'm reading now, it talks about the bombing of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. If I were in a Western state like that, I'd ask, where were you when the Murrah bombing happened, the Murrah building? But I want people to relate to something. And the 9/11 is wonderful because people know it. So that's the second way. First is spaced repetition. The second is impact. And the third is inspiration. And then I always say a religious person might think about, I got a message from God. Okay. I don't want to, maybe that worked for somebody, fine. But each of us has gotten inspiration. Something they made it. Where did I get? I don't know where. It just came to my mind. So what I do is come back. We're going to use spaced repetition because that's great because we can plan it, we can work with it, and I'm going to ask you to read multiple times of what we're doing. And not only are we going to use spaced repetition, but we're going to use a form of impact. Now, during the facilitated sessions, which we're not getting into now, I want to use the material and use your lives to create impact of concepts that this whole thing is talking about. And so that we will use impact. It's not just, oh God, we've got to kill thousands of people for you to get impact. No, but it's an example of impact. We'll use lesser lethal parts of impact to do that, but we do that. And then the inspiration will come from you. I can't control that. So we will learn. But now I want to go another way. Do we think most of our attitudes are positive or negative? Now, what answer do you think I get from most people?
Negative.
You know, I would think that. But I get so many people, especially young parents, or people that have young children. Oh, not me. My parents did that to me, and I'm not doing that to my child. And I said, well, that kind of makes sense because I can go through all the stuff about negative conditioning and whatever. And then I'll talk to that person. I say, you know, I can't do this because you guys all look too long in the tooth. But I'll look for somebody that has a young child. Oh, I have a little girl. How old is she? 4? Oh, give me pictures. I don't go for the pictures, but bet she's a really cute little girl. Absolutely. Well, do you let her go to the mall by herself? And what kind of an answer do you think I get?
Of course not.
Of course not. What am I, crazy? You know? Why not? Don't talk to strangers. And again, because we tend to believe that we don't know is evil, don't we? Okay. And I use those things. And again, the Malcolm Gladwell book, he does talk about that there's a default in our culture. As we meet people, we default to good, not bad, once I've met you. But before I meet you, I default to bad until I get to know you. But we do default to good with most people, which is wonderful. We couldn't exist as a culture if our initial default wasn't to good. Okay, when we meet people, but before we meet them and we don't know them, we default to bad. Now, I will talk about that. So most of our attitudes really are negative when we get into it. And we talk about don't talk to strangers. We lots of things to talk about that. So we learn attitudes. Most of them tend to become negative. And I'll use this other thing, that in our lives, we spend the first 18 years of our lives being filled with limitation. You can't do this. Don't, all the things that we talk about, all the, don't go where you're not wanted, don't talk to strangers. And parents do that to protect their children. And I also use the example of the 50s, Dr. Spock, not of Star Trek, but the psychologists that wrote books. And they believe that the generation of the 70s was ruined by Spock's work with parents, don't set limitations. So we've come to know that if I set no limitations for my children, I do this as a question and answer, but if I set no limitations for my children, I will destroy them. So I must set limitations. But then we get to be 18 and 19. And what keeps most people from being successful is limitations. So I use that, most of our attitudes, where we learn our attitudes, and we're going to use spaced repetition, we're going to use impact learning, and we're going to talk positively, because I want to replace the negative and the limited with the positive and the unlimited. So that ends my discussion on
attitudes.
Attitudes. Thank you very much. Then I go down the triangle and I put in skills. Okay? Now, then if I say the skills curve, are you familiar with it?
Yep.
Yes, no?
Yeah. That's the one that moves to more people as you advance.
I'm sorry. This will go away in the background in a minute. Hang on 1 second. I'm not answering.
Yeah, Bob, that's the thing where you start as an individual contributor, and as you move up, more to the people,
People are
less
familiar
to the
with that?
technical.
Yep. It's a major element of, because right now I draw the skills curve. And my wording with that is you get hired for 90% of a hard skill. I was trained to be an accountant. I get a job as an accountant. I'm trained to be an accountant. Whatever your skill is, even if you're trained to do nothing but dig ditches, you've got a strong back and you can dig ditches, you get hired for that. As we progress through our careers in life, no matter what, as we reach the apex of our careers, 90% of our pay is for soft skills, not hard skills. So everybody's got that. That's the skills discussion. We're going to utilize spaced repetition and learning. We're going to identify the skills we need to learn. And for the most part, except for the sales development process, they are soft skills. And there's a whole discussion, which I wouldn't get into now, is selling a hard skill or a soft skill. It is definitely a skill to be learned, as is leadership, as is management. And so we'll talk about the skills curve. Then we go to the goals part. And my discussion on that is the most powerful thing anybody can do is come to understand goals. And the difference between dreams, at the end of the chapter, what are we doing? I need help, Wendy. My mind just went blank. Anybody? Shoot.
The dream inventory?
What's that?
Are you talking about the dream inventory?
No. There's a sum between dream inventory and goals, and my mind just went blank. We want people at the end of every
Goal achievement?
No, not quite that far in the chapter. Goal categories. God.
Goal categories.
Oh,
It just escaped me for the moment. And I really did talk about that very, very briefly in the kickoff. We're going to treat goals seriously. We're going to treat it as a skill. We have attitudes about goals. And we're going to do goals in 3 ways. Not 3 ways, because first we're going to want you to dream, which is unfocused and no commitment. Then we want you to do goal categories, which is focused but no commitment. Then we want you to do goals and learn to understand goals, which are focused and create a commitment. I will talk more about that as we get into the material. Yes, Bob.
Could you just go through the subset of dreams, categories, and goals? Dreams have no commitment.
No focus. I use the word focus. No focus, no commitment. And so the dream inventory is a whole bunch of stuff. And that Mike would put down travel. I want to go places. I want to travel. No more specific than that. Now it's focus because he's picked travel. But there is no focus in a dream. I mean, you dream something, but your dream can be all over the place.
And in categories?
Then we're going to go through 7 and or 8, if we count time management as a category. We have the 6 personal plus professional and then time management. So we're going to go through 8 different areas where you're going to evaluate yourself. And by the way, because you asked the question, I'm answering it. I probably wouldn't have done this in the kickoff, but for the purpose of what I'm doing now, just to further have you understand it, is you're going to do goal categories, which now become focused because it may be in financial. It may be in physical, it may be in family, it may be in social, it may be in your job, but you're going to create a focused category. So it's focused, but still no commitment. I want to make more money is not a goal, it is a goal category. I want to be in better shape is not a goal, it is a goal category. Then when you get to goals, it becomes focused. I want to make an extra $10,000 a year. Focused and commitment. A goal is a commitment. And that's a whole other dialogue, which I won't go into now. And that's it. Then what I do is, because I've got this triangle, I then will take a circle around the whole thing. And then I talk about this all must be encompassed in your purpose in life. And we will talk about that. I will ask you to engage in that. Okay, so now I'm moving forward. I moved along. I talked about attitude, skills, and goals. And so the next thing I want to talk about, and this is where I go into motivation. Okay. And here, and I draw this again. I put there 3 kinds of motivation. And the first motivation I call fear, and I write down fear. And then I define it. I define it as, Dan, you work for me, and if you don't do what I want you to do, I beat you with my stick. Okay, so you perform, because if you don't perform, you're going to get beaten with a stick. Okay, so I put fear, I write it at the top, and then I put internal or external. And so, Dan, if I said to you, is fear motivation an internal motivation or an external motivation, what would you say?
Internal.
Well, where's the stick?
That's external.
Ah, because the stick is outside of you, right? And so it's external motivation. It's from the outside. Now, is it permanent or is it temporary?
Temporary.
Yes, because my stick has to get bigger and bigger. Okay? Now, and by the way, I've deviated from the outline and giving you what I do. I then write below fear, I put reward. Gee, it sure sounds better than fear. Okay, so now we go, Bertha, it's you work for me, and if you do what I want, I reward you. Okay, as I say, it sounds better than fear, but let's look at it. Is it permanent? Oh, excuse me, is it internal or is it external? What would you say? Bertha, got your audio on?
Oh, she's got the same problem Mike.
Okay, let's go back. Okay, Mike, try if your audio on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, good. And Bertha, if you speak and your audio comes on, I'll come back to you. Yeah, so I'm looking at your microphone. There's a red check through it. So your audio's okay. Damn. Somebody's got to get my phone. Hang on. Ignore it. So Mike, let's go back. Now my phone told me who the call is from. So the question, and that call happens to be from my wife, and that's our home line. Mike, so my question to you is reward internal or external?
So based on a discussion about fear, I would pick external.
It is, because it is what I want to give you. It's outside of you, and that's what I want to give you. Now, Mike, stay with me. Is it permanent or temporary?
Well, it's temporary.
Yeah, because the reward has to get bigger and bigger. And until it gets to the point where I can't do it anymore, okay? And then you go find another job and you leave. Now let's go to the third kind of motivation, which I call attitude motivation, okay? Bertha, do you have any sound yet? No, okay. We had that problem with Mike, Bertha, so I don't feel it was just you. You know, we couldn't get Mike to talk either. And Mike always talks, but we couldn't get Mike to talk. So now we go to the third kind, which is attitude motivation. By attitude motivation, what I want to find out is I want to know what you want. So Dan, you work for me. I want to know what you want. And you are going to tell me what you want. And then I want to find a way to reward you or have you reward yourself by getting what you want. Now, Dan, I would ask you the question, is that permanent or temporary?
Permanent.
It's yes. It will change, but slowly. Meaning what you want at 25 is different than 35. What you want at 35 is different than 45. And then you get into your 50s, your 40s, you're worried about educating kids. You get into your 50s, you're worried about retiring. So it will change, but at all times, I want to know what you want, and I want to align our goals if you work for me. Now, so it's inside because it's you, and it's permanent because it's inside you. It doesn't change. So whenever I talk about motivation in this work, or whenever the book talks about motivation, it will talk about motivation in that manner. Positive and internal and permanent. Make sense? Move on.
Can I just add something? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, don't be sorry.
This idea about helping you get what you want in an employer-employee relationship, I think that's great. I think the tag along to that, and you might have said it, is also to help you understand what you want.
That's part of the process, which is why we do the evaluations and things like that. Okay. And we'll get into that as the process goes forward, which we're not going to do now. This isn't a kickoff. But as the process goes forward, absolutely. I'm not telling you what you want. You are.
And if you're a sole provider, sole practitioner, which is
Yes.
I'm going to have in an hour.
Yes, yes, yes.
Kickoff. His aligning of his goals are aligning them with his would-be customers, with his prospects, with the other people he.
If you don't do what I want you to do in any venue, it's because you don't see the benefit. So if you're my customer, you don't buy from me,
Right.
You didn't see a benefit. Not because you're stupid. I mean, stupid, I don't have any money, or the recession. No, you don't see the benefit of doing what I want you to do. And that never changes. And I come back to that over and over and over. It never changes. Okay? Always there. Okay, so now the last thing I'm going to talk about now is conditioning. And I'll do this a little quickly because I've only got 4 minutes left. We can go a minute or two over, assuming that's okay, Wendy. I go through conditioning. I go through the 3 things, and I talk about fleas. But the first thing I talk about is if I have, okay, if I take fleas and I put them in a cup, and I turn the cup over, so the fleas are trying to get out the top and they can't get out, and then I turn the cup back over, they will never fly out because they've been conditioned that you can't get out by going up. The second mode, I talk about an elephant. You take an elephant, you tie it to a baby elephant, a calf, tie it to a stake in the ground with a rope that's strong enough to hold the elephant, but that elephant can grow to full bull elephant size and never pull that stake out of the ground because it's conditioned that you can't pull the stake out of the ground. And my favorite is, how you boil a frog. Now, most of us have heard of it. You boil the frog, you put the frog in cold water, you turn it on open fire, and the water will slowly come to a boil. The frog will never jump out. It will be boiled alive. Now, let's ask you this question. Where are you, like the fleas, being not challenging a restraint that used to be there but is no longer there now? Where are you, like the elephant, not challenging a barrier that would have held you at one point in your life but should not be holding you now, or doesn't hold you now, but you don't know it? And thirdly, and most important, where are you being boiled like a frog now? Theatrically, I let that hang there purposely. It's powerful. And people by this time are engaged and they're listening to that. At that moment, I hand out the life wheels. Everybody understands the life wheels, right? Say yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. I can't see Bertha. I get Bertha. Bertha, you understand the life wheels. Just shake your head. Good. Okay, everybody, okay. Now give out the life wheels, and I ask them to do it. And you have to do a different way if you're doing it remotely, where you can't give somebody that. But you can email them if you've got it, and they're doing it, and they're filling it out. And you give them time to fill it out, and just 3, 4, 5 minutes or whatever. And after everybody's filled it out, what I go through is I say, okay, if this were a bike and that one was the front wheel, one was the back wheel, how well would the bike roll? Not very well. How well would they mesh your personal life to your professional life? How would that work out? Not very well. But here's the key that I use that I think is most powerful. That when you did that exercise of the life wheels, I didn't tell you where you were on that wheel. You evaluated yourself. If you didn't think you were in good physical condition, you wrote you were closer to the center on that one. If you were concerned about your relationship with your family or didn't have friends, or you do that. Or, wow, man, my financial world is really in great shape. I'm putting myself way out to the edge of that. You do that. Now, here's the concept. The closer you put yourself, or the further away you put yourself for the outer edge of that wheel, the greater that distance, the greater the pain that you will suffer in each of those areas. You are not happy about where you are. And you know that. So now, my question to you is, if I had a process to move you closer to the outer edge of that wheel that you identified, is that something you would be interested in participating in? Dan,
Yes.
Mike,
Sure.
Robert,
Yes, sir.
Bertha, nod by. Right. That is the end of my kickoff. Okay. Now, over the years, I've evolved other things that I want people to do between this week and next week. I use, there's just 3 or 4 things that I use, and it doesn't matter. You know, in a different venue, I'd be more than glad to share each of those with you. Just email me, and I'll send those things to you. If you don't have them, they're on my I typed them in there from different places, so you just have to take my logo out. Anybody have any questions? Because that's the kickoff.
I do.
Anybody? And Bertha, you'd have to email me, arnold@awrinzler.com. Right.
I have a question, Arnie.
Sure.
This may have to go back to Wendy, because what you're saying to me, I'm trying to streamline this because I'm going to do it.
Don't. Please don't streamline it, Bob.
Well, excuse me. What I mean is, what you just told me, I'm
Yes.
delivering in an hour from now. So I want to keep it as tight and simple.
Yeah, but you have the outline of
Arnie.
instituting.
I have
It'd
the
be
outline.
helpful-
What I'm looking for.
He's doing it one-on-one. Wait, Bob, hold on a minute. Arnie, he's doing one-on-one coaching. So that's, I'll give you a little bit of theory. It's not with a group, it's for a one-on-one.
All right, but what I
Okay.
think I need for today, and this is where it comes to you, Wendy, I think, is to have another example. I have the squares that you sent me earlier. Maybe either the Fs or the connect the dots. But if the connect the dots is complicated, let's keep it to the Fs. If that's
Well, connect the dots is powerful.
all right. Well, could you
Okay,
say
I'm just, that was my experience. I do all 3.
because I want to be able at the proper time of going through this, as you just did, to send those off in a quick email that he opens up as we're talking. I think the other thing I'm going to need is the triangle you talked about with attitudes, skills, and goals. Because I think that's a single page.
Yes.
And
Wendy,
then the
you got that?
last one, as you just described, the life wheel in a nice clean sheet, so he can do what he has to do with it, and we can make that illustration. But other than that, I'm just going to follow this and put my own words to it and
Yeah.
get it done.
Yeah, Wendy, can I assume that everything that he's asked for, you, because I got them in my computer, I'm assuming you got them all. I got everything from you. Wendy,
The only thing sorry.
go ahead.
The only thing I'm not sure about is the attitude skill triangle, but let me see.
That might be a nice thing with the client to say, take a blank piece of paper. I want you to draw a triangle.
Or you can do it on a whiteboard or a flip chart. Truly.
He's doing it over the phone, I think he said.
But I have everything else.
Yeah. So if you don't have it, I'll do what Dan just suggested.
I have everything else.
If you do
And
have
these are, by the way, these are cheat sheets to help you remember what you're doing. I mean, that's why I do that. And you're going back and forth frequently through the dialogue. Okay. I mean,
Hey, Bob.
anybody else have any questions?
Hey, Bob, a quick suggestion on the 9 dots. You may want to send him 2. One, label it 9 dots 1 and 9 dots 2. The first one is just the 9 dots. The second one is the solution. But you may let him struggle with it first before
Absolutely. And by the way, I found it fairly easy to tell people draw 9. By the way, I use the word circles, not dots. And there's a reason. Okay. They can draw the 9 circles. And the reason is, what does a circle have that a dot doesn't have?
inside and outside.
Well,
Dimension.
Yes. So when you're doing, well, that gets into something which we didn't do. I first say connect with four straight lines, not taking your pencil or pen off the page. But then I do it with 3 straight lines. Okay, which is not, I brought that to the network, whether you ever used it or not. And there you need the circumference of the circle, because you're starting at the top, going down the middle, you come to the end, and so it's a slanted Z, which connects them all. But we didn't
Hey,
have to
Arnie,
go in.
can you do it with one straight line?
Yes, absolutely. How
Good.
would you do that?
Well, you got to have a pair of scissors.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
Absolutely not. Did I tell you anything about the width of the line?
Well, yeah.
So you take a paintbrush, wide,
Yeah.
that's one line, and you cover them all. That's my third one. Okay.
The other one you can do it is you can roll the paper. You can roll
Yeah,
the paper
I
and draw
got,
the line around.
yeah, without folding a paper. You just take one thick line, but that's okay. There's other ways to do it. But I've seen it, you'll show me. I think I'm finished. And truly, my email is arnold@awrinzler.com. Wendy can always put you in touch with me. It would be my pleasure. And as Wendy would say, if you're stuck anywhere, call her. If she's unavailable, call Gerard. If neither one are available, call Tammy. If she's not available, call me. Okay. Be my pleasure, and I'd love to help in any way that I can. Are we finished, Wendy?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much, Arnie. And Bob, when I hang up here, I'll be emailing you those forms, okay?
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to do, and I didn't do, is just review where they can see the kickoff and see it all on the website.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ernie.
Thanks, Arnie.
Check
Thank
it
you,
out.
Arnie.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.